Then it's divers down. The 72-year-old wreck lies 90 feet below on the sand bottom. Bill and Dalton Packer, who will be diving with us later in the trip, watch the action from above. The top of the Yongala is 45 feet down. Great stingrays are always your reception committee. Like weird hang gliders, they catch the upcurrents that crest at the top of the wreck. Like all wrecked ships, the Yongala has undergone a sea change into something rich and strange. She was lost in a 1911 cyclone with 120 passengers and crew and wasn't discovered by divers until a half-century had passed. Under her massive bow, the dense population of this wreck becomes apparent. Great schools of snappers almost obscure our divers in the open water beyond the bow. Rays cruise the bottom, a feeding ground for them with its carpet of mollusks. There are giant groupers. Australians call them gropers. Mark the pennant fish swimming upside down, oriented to the bottom of the ship. Only the smaller reef fish are seen in this reverse position. David Luffman is an old hand at snake handling. Sea snakes are bottom feeders. Their venom is deadlier than cobras. Fortunately, they are non-aggressive and can be handled gently with safety. Lenora Carey, an American diver, is not convinced but willing to try. There's a resident leopard shark. You can't count on his being there, but he accommodated us wonderfully. John Bound's wife, Penny, almost hugs the gentle animal. I rigged my underwater lights for night diving. These are 3 650-watt sealed beam lamps in Icolite housings, requiring, of course, a 110-volt surface power supply. An inner deck has become a squeezed, fur-lined artery. The guard has changed with the coming of night. The schooling fish, the big fish, are hidden secure. Night is the time for color on a wreck or reef. In total darkness, the invertebrate and plant life blooms, revealed visually only with our lights. The vivid reds are Antipatherian coral. The rich orange clusters that dominate the scene are zoanthids called tubastria. It is generally believed that sea snakes only become aggressive when they are really hassled. It was my impression that John Bound was really hassling this fellow. This is one of the several great loggerhead turtles we found sleeping under the wreck. By day, we had no sight of them. At night, they return to the reef for cover and security while they sleep. My companions kicked up the sand and sediment, knowing how I value the soft, artistic effect it creates. David suits up for another daytime dive. Lenora Carey, one of our diving team. Andy Crawford, the ship's engineer, was also an experienced, reliable diver and a great asset to our team. The diving tour on the Reef Explorer was led by Carl and Jessica Rossler of San Francisco. Carl with camera and Jessica as model form one of the most expert and successful underwater photographic teams in the world today. We lucked out with an octopus, an animal so well camouflaged that either a well-trained eye or good luck or both are needed to effect visual contact. To caress, pat, and otherwise fraternize with this repugnant-looking cephalopod requires more temerity than most divers might think they have. Jessica is a pro. Meanwhile, deep inside the old ship, we find some of the facilities still working after all these years. And given the fascination that Skin Diver magazine has for all divers, it shouldn't surprise us to find the ship's library well used by John Bound, somewhat perturbed at being interrupted. John Bound charts our course through the Flinders Passage in the Barrier Reef. We commence a Coral Sea cruise that will take us to Flinders and Dart Reefs, north-northwest to Holmes Reef, Bougainville Reef, and Osprey Reef, then back to the Barrier Reef at Dynamite Pass and the Cod Hole, and on into Lizard Island. We'll dive first in the Flinders Dart Reef Complex. Even Scotch Mist with her 10-foot draft can cozy up to the side of Dart Reef. At the edge, this reef drops off into 3,000 feet of water. Bill and Dalton, excited in anticipation of their first dive. Debbie's already in and snorkeling along the edge. Pack and his father explore the ledges along the cliff face. A white-tipped shark, just a little agitated about the strange animals appearing at the entrance to his cave. A complex of anemones, like a cluster of blonde wigs, assumes texture and color as my lights come within effective range. Orange anemone fish live symbiotically with their host, finding protection among the stinging tentacles and in turn attracting prey to the anemone. Flinders Reef, just 8 miles away, presents an entirely different experience. Here there are wide areas of shallow coral, sheltering a broad spectrum of reef life. Butterfly fish find security in the forest of finger corals and feed on the coral polyps when they are themselves extended for feeding. These are featherfin bullfish. Notice the black camouflage stripe that goes right through the eye like a mask. Lenora finds the young turtles somewhat less repugnant than the sea snakes. At Flinders Reef, we initiated our first shark encounters. A Pacific gray reef shark responds with his olfactory sense to bait we've hidden under a coral. This species is fast and aggressive when stimulated. John Bound is a little nonplussed with the speed of this feeding response. Scotch Mist, under power only, has a 2,500-mile cruising range. She carries and set the autopilot on that course. The next thing you know, you're on dry land. The anchor goes down on Holmes Reef, and the Zodiac is swung over the side. Feather stars are sometimes called living fossils. They are the most ancient living class of echinoderms, the crinoids. In the Caribbean, they are always well hidden. There, we may only see the tip of an arm protruding from under a coral. Here in the Coral Sea, David and Lenora find them fully exposed, anchored to the top of the reef with their jointed legs, which are called cirri. Usually hidden among the arms of the feather star, this clingfish is not easily spotted. He's something of an oddity, the only fish in the sea with a functioning neck. Soldierfish and the blue angelfish, prominent residents of the daytime reef. And my old friend, the Spanish dancer, largest and most dramatic of the nudibranchs. Our weather held fair. As evening came on, we seemed suspended in time and space, the Coral Sea like a mill pond. Exploring a reef by night is much like invading a sleeping dormitory. The inhabitants are drowsy, confused by the light, vulnerable. You may touch fish you couldn't approach within arm's length during the day. Australians call the lionfish a butterfly cod. That's a big eye and a Moorish idol. Look at those fabulous colors. That's the Fusilier in his nighttime garb. This is the flag-tailed surgeonfish. And most spectacular of all, the harlequin tusk fish. At night, the coronet fish can almost be caught by hand. Almost, that is. John Bound knows where to find the sleeping damselfish. By night, they take cover under the anemone and gain protection by mimicking the symbiotic clownfish. We always dined late after our night dives, thus giving our cordon bleu chef, David Hawke, plenty of time for the preparation of the Lucullian feasts. The bridge deck, though covered, was open to the cool, sea-scented night. The superb Australian wines warmed our souls. The Cabernet Sauvignons are especially excellent. Now this is what I call roughing it. At Osprey Reef, we would be diving deep for our best shark action. In all my single or repeat dives, I use a bottom timer for accurate downtime and an old-fashioned SOS decompression meter, which I play very conservatively. There's a deep shelf at 90 feet, beyond which the reef sinks out of sight. John Bound knows the area well and has created a shark feeding station here. A gray reef shark was our first customer. He's cautious, circling first and eyeballing John and the bait on the spear. His reconnaissance was interrupted by the arrival of a fierce-looking, battle-scarred warrior. This is a dog-toothed tuna. I'd never seen one before. Like all the tuna and jacks, he is curious and presses close. It's something of a shock at first to see all those teeth coming right at you. The white-tipped reef sharks have found the bait. John tries to discourage them with his spear to save the baits for more interesting sharks that may be around. Here's what we've been looking for. This is a silver-tip shark, Albimarginatus, a particularly beautiful species. He too is cautious. He will take the bait, but first he scopes out the area, circling wide to have a look at the packers and crew who are watching from the peanut gallery. He takes his time. then commits to the bait. I move in and then have to lever him over me with the camera and light. David Luffman caught that. And this is what my camera recorded. Those last scenes were slowed down by a factor of 3. At real pace, the action is so fast that one only has time to act instinctively. We all overstayed our time by a small margin. Fortunately, we had ample air left to level off in the shallow water at the top of the reef and put in a little decompression time for a safety margin. In approaching Dynamite Pass, John Clydesmith keeps a watch aloft and launches the divers within a few yards of the magnificent barrier reef. The corals of the Great Barrier Reef are more varied, more intricate, and far more densely populated than those of the ocean reefs in the Coral Sea. We have entered a very different world here. The bud-like corals are called Acropora pulchra, and each colony is inhabited by myriad little fish called humbugs. In this case, the banded humbug. At the nearby cod hole, the porcine, overstuffed animals for whom the place has been named require a wide-angle lens for any close-action shots. In a Pavlov's dog syndrome, they have learned to associate bubbles with food and divers with feeding. So they're waiting and drooling when we arrive with dinner. These are the now famous and gluttonous potato cod. David is wearing his formal head waiter's outfit and fully prepared for the occasion. These huge groupers are neither friendly nor hostile. They are just chronic gourmands. You may see by their bulging guts that they are fed regularly. They never fail to respond, and so have become one of the great diving attractions on the Barrier Reef. When the lantern jaw opens to suck in a bait, a hand may go with it if you're not careful. This one inhales a bait that David holds in his teeth. The mask may vanish at the same time. The benefactors depart having run out of food, followed by the still hungry banqueters, who would keep this up all day until they exploded. I've often been asked where I have found the finest diving in the world. There is no ready answer. So many factors contribute to the experience. But the memories of this trip compound a wonderfully positive answer. For many divers, the experiences, the encounters we accumulated in just 2 weeks of Coral Sea and Barrier Reef diving would provide a lifetime of memories. Add to this a beautiful ship with sails taut, heeling to the wind, her mast a rival to the stars. The easy hours underway. All these parts are the fabric of our memories, the stuff from which this splendid experience was made. And what of the potato cod, those obese, corpulent, bloated, drooling clowns? As long as the world's food supply holds out, they'll be around and looking for divers. But the Scotch mist may never be in the Coral Sea again. There are still many other seas to explore. When the play has been played and the tank has been drained and you return to home base with a goodly store of